Hello, this is English 7, and we are in the fourth 9 weeks and working on the novel The K. This is the Analyzing Character Through Conflict activity 3 of 4, the Concentric Circles activity. So how can I find this assignment in Canvas? So first we click on Files. Then we're going to go to English 7. This is the fourth 9 weeks. And we're going to scroll down to 7, Analyzing Character Through Conflict. And if you notice, although I mentioned that there are 4 activities that go with this assignment, notice there's no 7A, 7B, 7C, it's just 7. So it's all included within this one document. So all of your passages will be here. All of the activity instructions are here. So here you have, as usual, your teacher notes for just some background, your materials and resources you're going to need, how you can assess your students, and some ways, just some suggestions to make your lesson flow a little more smoothly. This is one of those lessons you do have to prepare for in advance. So by the time we get to activity 3, your students have, I'm showing you how to get there because you do have to do some scrolling. All right, so they've already done activity 1, which is where they do the character analysis chart, where they identify and kind of trace Philip's reactions to conflict. And there's the character analysis chart that they complete. Then in activity 2, they do a close reading, and they have to create that plot pyramid on the wall with sentence strips, and they respond to discussion questions and look at character traits and post them based on where they fall in the plot diagram. They also create this character diagram, and remember, if your students are still having trouble with identifying specific character traits, there is that resource that I showed you in the tutorial for the character analysis journal during the second 9 weeks. And there's a great resource in the ELA resources that provide a large list of character traits. It's broken down into like general qualities, mental qualities. All right, so here we finally arrived at activity 3. So you have to scroll down to page 6 to get to what we are looking at today. Okay, so let me get back. And so like I told you that they had already talked about analyzing character through conflict as far as tracing Philip's response to conflict, and developed that character analysis chart. And then they did the close reading and built that interactive pyramid so they could see in a visual representation how Philip progresses from the beginning of the novel until the end. But if you look at weeks 2 through 6, you're going to see how these analyzing character through conflict passages are embedded throughout. And that makes it easy for students to follow along as they read the novel and then break down each one of these passages as they go along and see how Philip is reacting to these conflicts and how he is changing throughout the course of the novel. And this is eventually going to lead to the development of an AEC where students talk about Philip's progression as a character. And so this is what we're going to work on today, activity 3, Concentric Circles. I'm going to break this down more specific as we move ahead, but just a brief overview. The concentric circles are 3 circles drawn inside of one another. You have an innermost circle, middle circle, and then an outer circle. In this inner circle, students are going to include the conflict within the passage that is assigned to them. So I want them to be specific. So instead of saying character versus character, it would be Philip versus whoever he is against. Or instead of saying character versus nature, you would want to be more specific using Philip's name. Now, sometimes you may have more than one conflict in a passage, and that's fine. So if that happens to arise, just let the group decide which one is the most important to Philip's characterization, what reveals the most about his reaction to the conflicts. Then the next thing that they would do would be decide the character traits in the middle circle and provide an emoji to indicate that same character trait. And in the outermost circle, they will include textual evidence to support those character traits in the middle circle. And that will lead to the development of a topic sentence and an AEC, which we'll talk about in a separate video. So essentially, this is what it's going to look like. You can have your students do this in a Google drawing, which is what I've done here. They can draw it in their notebooks. You can give them a piece of chart paper. That's totally up to you, however you want them to present the information to you. Okay, so I want you to take a moment and pause, and I'm sure you've already read this passage earlier today, but I would like for you to reread it to be prepared for what we're about to discuss. Okay, and then this is the concentric circles activity. This is how we start. Have your students create the 3 circles, whether you give them a template in Google Drawing and then let them fill it in themselves, creating a Google Doc, or if you want to have them created on chart paper, notebook paper, this is how you begin. Okay, so here I said that in that passage that Philip was in a conflict with his parents. They both wanted him to go back to the United States, and he just really wasn't very happy with that decision. So being more specific, this was Philip versus his parents. Okay, in the second circle, we're going to think about Philip versus his parents, the conflict, and we're going to decide on character traits. You do not have to have them include 4 character traits. That may be too difficult. I do 3 in the next example, but this is up to you. This is your discretion. However many character traits you feel like they need to include based on the passage, indicate that to students. Let them know your expectations. So here's what I said. In passage A, Philip was resentful. He was unsure, and he was angry. I also included some emojis. The kids like to do this just because it adds a little bit of fun and excitement to the assignment, whether they draw them or they copy and paste them. Okay, on the outermost circle, we're going to take these character traits that we decided about Philip, and we're going to include text evidence to support each one. It is very important that each character trait receives a piece of text evidence. Okay, so if he's resentful, here's the piece of text evidence I found. It doesn't have to be an entire quote. I did include that here. They can just include a portion of a sentence. I'll leave that up to you. If you want them to do MLA citations, you could do that at this point. I did pull entire quotes, and it is important that they use their quotation marks for a direct quote. All right, so if we're resentful, then I became angry and accused her of being a coward. She told me to go off to school. I said I hated her. Okay, so in this portion, I said that he was resentful of his mother. Okay, here's unsure. But I had the feeling that it might be a very long time before I saw Curacao and my father again. So he was just a little unsure, even though he went back and told his friends that he was just going to visit his grandparents. He had a feeling he wasn't going to be back, but he wasn't exactly sure. Right here, he's angry. Then I became angry and accused her of being a coward. I mean, that's explicitly stated there. That's easier for students to pick up on, and they will use those, and that's fine. And then lastly, once students finish the concentric circles activity, they will be able to take what they've developed here, reviewing each of the passages, to use this sentence stem that has some hints about character traits, conflict, and shows them where to use the changes from the character. They will use this template to write a topic sentence based on the information from the concentric circles activity. That will then lead to having students write an AEC paragraph that provides the reader with information regarding how Philip progresses from the beginning of the novel until the end.